All right. So we will go ahead and call the meeting to order. It's 10 o'clock. And if we can get roll call, please.
Chair Martinez-Beltran.
Here.
Vice Chair Meadows.
Here.
Director Scozola.
Here.
Walia.
Here.
Klein.
Here.
And participating remotely, Director Tyson.
Here.
Thank you. All members are present. We have a quorum.
Okay. I'd like to take public comment at this time for any matters that are not listed on the agenda. Do we have any public comment here or? None. Okay, very good. So we'll close public comment and we'll move to the consent calendar. Excuse me. Does anybody have anything on there? We want to go ahead and approve the minutes of the February 28th, 2025 executive committee meeting.
So moved. No changes, no.
Okay.
Public. Oh, yeah, public.
We would like to see if we could take public comment, if there's any public comment on any consent calendar items. Do we have anybody online?
No, we have Bruce here.
Yes.
No comment.
Okay.
And no
Thank you,
one online.
All right, so we'll close public comment. And now,
I'll second.
all right, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All those in favor?
We will do a
Oh,
roll
we'll
call.
do roll call, sorry.
Chair Martinez-Beltran.
Aye.
Vice Chair Meadows.
Yes, here.
Scozola.
Aye.
Walia.
Oh,
Klein.
yes.
Aye.
We haven't gotten into grade.
Somebody said here, whatever. Okay.
Did she ask for me yet?
Yeah, I just did.
Okay, I say yes. I'm sorry about making you have to go through all that voting thing.
No, you're fine. Thank you so much. That motion carries.
Okay, great. And today we've had a request if we can try and get out of here. And we will try and get finish up so that everybody can get where they need to go. So we will now move to the regular calendar. Item 2 is the CEO update.
Can I make a request to make a change to the agenda order?
Yes, you sure can.
All right, so for we want to move item 6 right after item 4. So item 6 will be the new item 5 and item 5 will be the new item 6.
Okay, great.
And then I'm going to keep my CEO report really brief because I know that we're trying to get out of here early. So just wanted to remind everybody that we have a ribbon cutting scheduled for next month. This is the Hanford natural gas peaker plant with a clean battery energy storage system co-located with it. The event is on April 17th. It's in Hanford. It's kind of an interesting one because we've never done one like this before. And we have an esteemed speaker coming on our behalf as well, U.S. Congressman Bayadeo. And then Chair Tyson will be speaking on behalf of SVCE as well. And then one of the items that you're going to hear about today is how we can make a difference in the Hanford community. So that was just a reminder that if you want to attend, let us know and we'll make sure. I know some of you are already scheduled to attend. If anybody else wants to attend, it should be really cool event. All right, with that, that concludes my CEO report.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And I won't be able to do that. I'm so bummed, but it's spring break for the kids. Okay, so number 3, we have to recommend the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Board of Directors authorize the Chief Executive Officer to execute contracts with King's Community Action Organization and Self-Help Enterprises from the Hanford Mitigation Fund. So we will go ahead and hear from Pam.
Okay, good morning, Executive Committee. Pamela Leonard, and I'm joined today with Juliette Pasquale, who's been helping lead this stakeholder engagement effort to determine which organizations we would like to fund. And I normally like to speak slower in my presentations, but I know we have a time constraint. So, I'm trying to be find the right balance. So we're gonna review what the fund goals are, and the guidelines that were approved last year by the board and how that led us to meet with local organizations to determine the local priorities and then come to you with these recommendations. So what the ask is today is that the executive committee can make a recommendation to the board that the CEO can enter into contracts with these 2 organizations. And the ask as well is to help us determine funding amounts because we have 2 options from one of the organizations. So either it's going to be $761,000 over 2 years or the 1.5 over 5, as you can see. Background, the guidelines were established last year by the board of directors, and the guidelines were a requirement of the power purchase agreement when we entered into the contract for the natural gas peaker power plant and battery energy storage system. And that the funds would help mitigate some of the emissions from the reliability facility. And, you know, this of course is in alignment with our mission and our goals as an organization. So just a little bit about the plant that we were just talking about. It is a really exciting one for us because it really exemplifies how we're balancing affordability, reliability, and clean. So we know we have this, the need for a natural gas fleet in California to enable this transition and maintain reliability. We also, of course, have these resource adequacy procurement requirements after we had some of those challenging summers at the beginning of this decade. Like I can say of this decade, now that I'm in the middle of it. You know, the exciting part, right, is that, you know, this is an existing facility that's been there in Hanford, but the contract is enabling the build out of this battery storage, which would be utilized first before the gas plant would be utilized when it's called on, and that will lower emissions over time. So lowers the runtime of the gas plant. So a little bit more, just a reminder about Hanford in Kings County and the San Joaquin Valley. And just really wanted to call out that a majority of the communities within the county are designated as disadvantaged by the state. Data point. And then we're really just looking at, for today's discussion, several of the 3 of the 8 guidelines that were approved. And it is that we found it to be extremely important that we hear from the community what their priorities are. We don't want to go in and assume that, you know, EVs for all, right? So we have those discussions. So that's what we are bringing back for this discussion today. And again, that the focus of the funds should be directed to emission reduction activities in disadvantaged or low-income communities in Kings County. So we reached out to half a dozen organizations. The first 2 are the ones we're recommending to move forward with. They have the most energy-specific programs. And then the other 2 were just really, really insightful conversations to learn more about the region. They, you know, have a lot of ties to the impacts in the community based on environmental issues in the area. And then the last one in particular was an interesting group. They're a community fund like any other where they administer funding to other organizations. And they've done some initiatives focused around economic growth and job training in the region. However, this is like a new thing that isn't quite ready to be launched, but they did identify that a priority is taking advantage of the clean energy economy and wanting to do more there. So that was just really insightful. So what we learned about the local priorities is, you can see them there. This is a survey that's done through a coalition of groups that operate within Kings County, and it's really representative of a lot of different sectors. So there's healthcare groups, there's judicial groups, there's education, just very, very far reaching to help administer the survey. So we think it's very representative. And it's nice to know that it was actually done fairly recently. So we're just looking at this, how can our filter of the fund priorities line up with the priorities of the community? So that's where we came to these recommendations. One is to fund a weatherization program, and another is a very interesting, this group does run electrification initiatives, which is very aligned, as we know. So Kings Community Action Organization, they've been around for 60 years. They're a community services organization, so social safety net, like Sunnyvale Community Services come to mind, for example, all the ones we have here. So they do have all kinds of programs to help with like financial assistance, early childhood education, and those kinds of things. So the weatherization program, the funding request of $300,000 over 2 years would help them extend the amount of households they are able to serve and reach. And in case anyone saw a typo in an earlier, the posted version, it is the average cost is, you know, 5,600 or so per home, not 5 million, because yes, there was an extra comma.
Those are nice homes.
Yeah. And you know, of course, the benefit here, while it's not necessarily electrification specifically, when you do weatherization, you're overall improving, you know, people's comfort, lowering energy demand, and that helps reduce their bills, which we saw was priority number 1. The next group, Self-Help Enterprises, they're a community development organization really focused on housing. They do a lot of their services are directed to the farm worker community. They serve the greater San Joaquin Valley region, but they have a very strong presence in Kings County. And they have a team that is dedicated to, they're the Sustainable Energy Solutions team. So they are looking to really direct their clients to ways that they can take advantage of rebate programs and other incentives and payment assistance programs, anything available through the utilities, which their whole region is has PG&E and SCE. So they do a lot of work in this space. And we heard about them because we were reading a report from a CPUC San Joaquin Valley pilot program, which was looking to electrify rural properties from propane to electric. And so they, again, just have a really strong background and knowledge in this space. And so what's really unique about their proposal is that they're really focused on community outreach and education. The finding they had in the CPUC programs is there's money out there to electrify, to actually switch and upgrade equipment, but then the gap is helping those homeowners understand how to best utilize and operate the equipment. So just because you're adding heat pump, heating and cooling, you should really be optimizing your use with time of use rates. Or if it's a multifamily property, understanding the specific maintenance needs of heat pump equipment, heat pump water heaters, it's just a little bit different. So there's just this education, this training, this need in the community. And also we find similar challenges here, right? Because they're also introducing electrification to a community where this is a very new concept, and they know that this is where the state is going. They know that they understand the benefits of electrification, especially in a region that suffers from poor air quality, and they don't want the region to get left behind. So this component of community outreach and engagement is instrumental in ensuring the success of scaling electrification. And they get that. And so that's what's really, really interesting about this organization. So I'm going to go into the two funding options that they've given us in their proposals. One is the 2-year, then the other is 5 years. And so the 2-year one, so the Community Energy Navigators, this was this outreach model that they deployed in the CPUC programs where they're employing local people to do the outreach in their communities. So anyone can apply and get this job. And it's really sort of that peer-to-peer, just education, outreach, and it seems to be a really effective way to reach specifically low-income disadvantaged communities that they serve and like their client base, and to help connect those folks to energy resources. I think there's a lot that SVCE can even learn from the tactics that they're deploying. So that would be interesting to kind of an interesting benefit of the partnership. And the other one is Lincoln Plaza, which is an existing affordable rental community in Hanford. And they would like to electrify the community space, actually demonstrate the electric equipment that they are promoting, and then use that as a space to have workshops and events that the Community Energy Navigators can utilize. So the next proposal is the same, just 5 years, but the first two things are the same. The new option here and the larger investment is to commit funding that would allow them to electrify the community space of a new development that is planned in Corcoran. We learned that that's a city near Hanford, and we had found that, or we learned that of Kings County, Hanford is actually one of the more vibrant cities in the area, and it's really these like surrounding smaller communities that tend to have greater need. And so they're building a new facility, new affordable housing development, and the funding that we could commit would allow them to design the space to be built all electric. And then this also would serve as a central electrification hub for their outreach, awareness, community events. And they are also calling it eHub, which of course we love eHub. Great. They've got good marketing people. Okay, so in conclusion, so we've learned that these two organizations have a strong track record. They both were founded in 1965 and have been delivering services to the community. And again, these are the programs we're recommending. And we will work out the reporting requirements as part of the contracting process. That is something that we will determine and how we want to evaluate the effectiveness of the programs, determine what the reach is, et cetera. And then the board in the guidelines said that we would provide annual updates on the progress of the use of the funds. And then we are also not exhausting the funds that are available. The board did approve 1.8 million to be used in the fund that was approved in the annual budget. Okay, so next steps, help us determine the funding amounts and make a recommendation to the board of directors to go on the consent calendar at the April meeting, which then will allow us to move forward with contracting and then hopefully have them represented at the ribbon cutting event since it is local for them. Okay.
Yeah, and the consent one is part of it doesn't have to go on consent, it can go on regular if you guys prefer to.
Okay.
And these are the two options here. I just have those laid out with the funding amounts.
Okay, well, that is fantastic. I'm really excited about this opportunity. So I'll go ahead, I have some questions, but I'll go ahead and take questions from anybody if they want to clarify anything.
I do have a question. So I was interested that you said that a large part of the community uses propane as their.
They're rural.
They're very rural, so they have those big tanks sitting out there. So electrification has got to be more attractive than propane tanks. So they might provide an example of accelerated uptake that we could then use, because our community is, we're not using propane tanks, right? And so this could be great, because it would be such an advantage, and that we might really see great uptake we could hold up as an example to our communities.
I will comment on that though, because they're rural, when power lines go down, often
They're
are.
last on the list
Yes.
for
This is
getting it back up
at least-
again.
But I've heard
yeah.
from friends that live in other rural areas that sometimes service is disrupted longer. So the backup,
interesting, yes.
local power, whether or not it's local generator or
Mhm.
propane.
So
the
can
need
you
is
make the connection for me? So what do you?
So if to fully electrify,
Mhm.
which would be fantastic, I love so it's great to fully electrify. That being said,
Yeah, to have
the
confidence.
more rural
Yes.
you are, the more likely.
Good point.
And that's the,
Yes. Right,
that's the only
got it.
way, or what I've heard from
Yeah, no,
friends who live in a more rural community, that they're like, yeah, I can't give this up.
Right.
And that's
Right.
always, anyway.
No, you're right.
But if it's fully if they have full battery storage, if they have full solar, all great. But I love these two programs, just to kind of follow on to some of my comments and questions. So visiting those websites and kind of going through, I was so both of them, especially the service organization one, doing fantastic work and other things and all this. Weatherization, I do think we don't normally focus on that, but I do think that that's something that their community really needs. And then the other one, you talked about their community outreach group. Is this a program that they've had going in the past, and just get a better idea for what can we learn from that program that we haven't done?
Yeah, so the Community Energy Navigators was a model that was used in the two pilots that were the CPUC funded pilots.
Okay.
So they found that they were a successful way to engage people to have these conversations about electrification, because it's something I didn't mention, but it's really, they're complementary in a way, because the first organization, the King's Community Organization, told us that their clientele is very anti-electrification. That's all they hear.
Yeah.
But then you have another group working in the same community where they are helping to accelerate adoption. And Juliet, how many homes did they do again? And I think you had this number.
About 250 in 2022.
Yeah,
Right.
so really high uptake.
Yeah.
So it seems like it's very successful. So they want to do more of it, because it's not a program that's currently funded outside of the CPUC pilots. They would like to do more of it because they found it to be successful.
How much did the CPUC give them to do this program, if you know?
Well, it was a CPUC decision that authorized the program, and then they worked with PG&E, SoCal Edison, and other large IOUs to get this completed. But they say that it was about $5,000 to electrify homes, and they're on a scale of some are on propane, some are already on the grid, so that's the ballpark that we're.
And then as far as, is this service area SoCal Edison or PG&E?
Mix of both
Oh, really?
because their entire service area is the 9 counties in the San Joaquin Valley. Or we're focusing on Kings County, but their CPUC pilot was just all throughout their service area.
But Kings County is PG&E.
Yes.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, Director Vol.
Thank you. Thank you for a great staff report, Pam. And of course, you can't go wrong with an organization called SHE.
I like it.
Clarity question. So 2 years for Kings County
Mhm.
and 2 or 5 year for SHE. I see a nod there, okay. So are we then not going for, if we go 5 years with the second group, are we not doing 5 years with the first group? There's one thing, let me ask a couple more things right there so you can answer in the interest of time. You mentioned that the reporting requirements you will work out, and which is fine. You have talked with all these organizations. Is there a benefit at this point without knowing the reporting requirements for us to go toward 5 years just for the second group? Because I'm seeing 2 years and 5 years, so that's kind of if you can help me understand that.
So just to make sure I understand the question, what is the benefit of doing 5 years over 2 with the second group?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Um,
because we don't have the reporting requirements yet,
right.
but you have talked to the groups.
Right, the main difference between the 2 and 5 years is the commitment for 5 years with SHE is that the Lakeview Terrace property in Corcoran is in planning. And so they would like to have the funding committed in order to be able, as an affordable housing property, they have various requirements to show funding commitments in order to move forward with the project. And so I'm sure that is, they assured us it's secured and it's happening, but then our commitment would allow them to plan and design the community center to be built all electric. And so without that funding commitment, they're probably just not gonna spend the extra funds to do that. And it would then have to be maybe something like the other Lincoln Plaza property, which would be like a retrofit. So that's the main difference between the two.
And if we do 5 years there, then why not do 5 for the other group as well? But then we are getting very close to the total 1.8 that was approved. And in the long run, can this be sustained if we are not able to provide more funding? That's kind of where my brain is trying to connect all these dots there.
Yeah. It's a great question. I think initially our thoughts was that we wanted to start small because we haven't worked with these community groups before. We haven't worked in this community before. So that this kind of would allow us to establish, determine the effectiveness and establish the relationship. And so then maybe after, as we're approaching the 2 years with the first group, we could say, yeah, like maybe we use the remainder of the funds with them, or maybe something changes and there's a desire to shift the remaining funds to, a different kind of effort. So we wanted to maintain that flexibility. That was the initial thinking about starting with the smaller funding amounts.
And I completely hear that. That is why to me, the 2 years and the 5 years, so that's kind of the odd situation. With the 5 years, we are able to give them the support to get the approval. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Director Scasola.
Yeah, thank you. Before my question, real quick comment. SVCE obviously has a ton to be proud of, but this one, when I read this, like it gave me the feels. Like this is so beautiful. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, we can do this. This is amazing. So I think you know which option I'm going for already. But my question is reporting requirements, just kind of in a nutshell, like what exactly, how often are we going by numbers? Do we know anything at this point, or is it we have to dip our toes in the water and feel it out first?
I think we would have those conversations as like a next step once we have, because we really just wanted to make sure that we had support and have an idea of the funding amounts before we continued.
Sure.
And they are very used to reporting. These are, nonprofits that receive federal and state grant funding. And Hopefully, one thing is we can be less cumbersome for them. And I think, looking at numbers is definitely, right? Like we can just look at what is their reach, especially like outreach and education is something that is hard to measure. And so you really do have to look at the number of individuals, number of conversations, pre and post surveys and things like that for the events that they do. So that's some ideas.
And so it's pretty high confidence. I mean, obviously, we still have to have those conversations, but they seem to have a track record, and so this gives us that high confidence. Okay, great, thank you.
I think it's a really important part of this whole, obviously we want to do well and, we're at the same time, these are SVCE funds.
Absolutely.
Make sure that we have the proper oversight, and that the money that we send them is actually getting put in the place that we think it's gonna go. So it's important to build that relationship.
Okay, Director Tyson, I see your hand up.
Oh, yes, thank you. And I have one question and then some comments. And so I'll just do the question and then we'll see when you want your comments. And the question is, with the KCAL weatherization project, and I see the money we're providing is roughly 3/4 of what we think is I do math in my head, the 81 times 5,600. And so I'm just thinking, is that about what we're thinking? And it's not like there's some match, like somebody else is putting in money. We're just going to go until we spend that money, which is about 60, right? 50 or 60 households. And is that kind of the strategy?
Right, yeah, we saw that they had higher funding in previous years where they were able to reach more than 100 households. And so this would be the incremental funding that would allow them to reach 100 a year over 2 years. And then also kind of help pay for like the actual materials required for the upgrades that they're making to people's homes.
Okay. I said I had one question. I guess that leads to a second one, and that is, there was an earlier comment. Now I have the floor. There was an earlier comment about one being 2-year and 1 year, 5-year. This one seems like it's the kind of thing you could just go do. And so I kind of like it as a 2-year. And then the other one, you run the risk of you getting partway through starting to implement and then you're done. And so there's certain things inherently longer term, but I'm starting to get into comments, so I'll back off now.
Okay, thank you. And we will come back for comments. I had a question on, I'm interested to know, is there a deadline for when we have to make that decision to be part of this community building?
Oh, that is a good question. Do you have a sense? I feel like it was pretty timely. Like it was one of those things where the stars matched up and they were in the planning process now.
For
For-
the
for-
Lakeview Terrace
yeah.
project,
Yeah.
the timeline, I think,
Okay, so that was one. The other one I wanted to ask was on the commitment amount for that project as well. I think that could be, I'm eating a cough drop, but I think that could be a really great thing for SVCE if we were to go into a community like this and have a flagship of something that's electrified where, it's really gonna knock the socks off people, right? I think that would be a great use of our money, but I also see that we're looking at timeline and we're looking at have we worked with them before. So I'm just wondering on the commitment, does it have to be, this additional amount? Can it be lower, or I'm trying to understand how we got from the 460 to the one,
Yeah.
1.4.
Yeah, they, some appendix slides with some more of a breakdown. So let me look at my own notes here. Well, one way that we could, look to lower some of these, upfront commitments is the community energy navigators. They did budget it over 5 years instead of 2, because I think they wanted to line it up with utilizing the same outreach group at this new property. So, there is the opportunity there that we could perhaps say, well, let's see how that goes first for a couple of years at your existing property and not tie that to the new property. So that would reduce some of the funds requested there. The ask specifically for the Lakeview Terrace, the new property, is 395,000 of that total 1.146. So that was that one, I don't think there is wiggle room because it is tied to the build and like the capital project costs there.
Okay, it just seems like a lot a bigger difference than that 400,000, right, from the 460. So I'm just trying to, maybe it is the CNNs
It
that you
is,
talked
yeah,
about.
that went from 178 to 438, so that like basically.
Okay, got it. So that might be it. Okay, where I think there's a lot of value in the CN, so, but I'll save that for comments. And then for the weatherization, which I'm not as excited about because I think these communities could probably do a lot more on their own with weatherization than the education piece on the other, but what, you know, I guess I'm trying to figure out, since we haven't worked with them before, were there any challenges that they shared with you that, you know, were necessarily they're going to be using these funds towards, or was it just going to be to carry out the program? Was there anything?
It wasn't, I would say, free to jump in, but
Yeah,
I wouldn't say there was.
I think that it is mostly just extending their reach. They have the staff available to do it, but the funding amount year to year has fluctuations.
Okay. And then my last question was, are either of these programs, when you're seeing, you know, an instability in funds that might be federal or tied to climate or things like that, are any of these projects have maybe some type of a matching fund that we would be concerned may not be there?
So great question. I meant to cover that in one of my slides. So fast. So KCAO, they receive their funding. They have a utility bill payment assistance program that's, you know, separate from weatherization, that's funded through LIHEAP. That they said they've received the funding already from the federal government through 2025. So they already have fundings reserved, and the weatherization funding comes from the DOE, and they already have that funding. So there is a potential that something could change next year, but they already have the existing funds to administer those programs this year.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you very much. I will, go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I wanted to be first to do comments. I just.
Oh. Okay, great. Should we take public comment? And then we'll come back and do our comments, and you'll be first on the list, Director Dyson. So do we have, yes, Mr.
I do have a comment. A couple of years ago, I was having a conversation with Girish about, you know, what will the future look like? How will we get off natural gas as part of the electrical generation? And he said, you know, as we move in that direction, there will be 2 times of year when we'll need gas peaker plants. One is in the summer for the high air conditioning time of year, and one is actually on cold winter nights when we didn't have enough battery storage and it was cloudy. And so it crosses my mind, responding to Director Klein, that these are the 2 times of year when insulation really matters. So on a hot summer day and on a cold winter night, your insulation reduces the amount of energy you need to consume. And this is more of an in our service territory comment, because on a hot summer afternoon, we're paying a lot for electricity. You're paying a lot for electricity, and we're not paying as much as we should, given the way that the prices will peak. And so it seems to me that weatherization in our service territory could be a very high ROI program, particularly in the southern parts of the county where it gets hotter. So applying that to Kings County may not see the financial benefit, but the residents of Hanford and the surrounding area may very well appreciate that. And frankly, insulating a single family stucco house is not that hard to do. It takes a day. And when you're done, you have to do a little painting on the outside where the holes were, you know, drilled. But compared to putting in a heat pump HVAC system, it is an easy peasy thing to do and not scary because it's not new technology. So I support that.
Can I just respond?
Yes, please.
So I 100% agree with you. In fact, the state of California agrees as well. And they have this thing called a loading order. And energy efficiency is #1 priority resource. Before you do anything else, build a new clean power plant, do anything, you should always do all of the energy efficiency you can. And we in fact do have some weatherization type programs in our community too. And maybe Justin, I'm going to put you on the spot, can talk to them a little bit, but we do also promote weatherization in our service territory as well. Because it's important to use energy as efficiently as possible before you build and electrify. 100% agree with you.
Okay, did you want to talk to her? You look thrilled to talk
No,
about
it's
it.
fine, I mean, what Monica said, and yeah, we've done more to incorporate energy efficiency into our electrification programs as well as on top of, promoting the existing energy efficiency, but I think, to Carney's point, it's important for us to be thinking about it as a resource, and so I think that's something that as we're refreshing some of our thinking there, we're looking at that again as well.
And if I could just add, we have our existing DIY home saving energy saving toolkit in all the libraries that we promote, and we also have partnered in the past with Grid Alternatives. I think they do the low income weatherization, like home house call program that is funded by the state. And so we've also partnered to promote that to our customers in our community in the past.
Okay, awesome. So now is there any other comments?
No additional public comment.
All right, so we'll close public comment and we will take our first comment of discussion of the directors. Director Tyson.
Why, thank you. I have a lot of experience with Rotary International projects where a group of people decides what fits in a very disadvantaged community around the world. And so I just want to tip my hat to the staff for the way you've approached this, because what we do is we start with two things, a needs assessment and then a sustainability assessment. Because it's so easy for outsiders to come in and say, this is what you need laptops when you don't have running water, things like that. Or when the pump breaks, nobody's going to fix it. So that's the thing I've learned from that. So I love the fact you started off with your needs assessment and the Kings County priorities of the 4 things that you list there. I think we're addressing 3 of them. We're not addressing the food insecurity. And I think that's a really great start. I also really like the fact that you've chosen 2 organizations, one that's there in that county, and because it's so easy for your money to get spread all over the place. So you've chosen one and it's very doable, and I like the scope of it and the fact that it's 2-year. The other one is broader, it's inherently longer term. And so I'm going to switch hats a little bit. I have a lot of experience serving as a financial officer for nonprofits. And whenever somebody dies and leaves money for us in their will, we love it. We take the one-time money, but it's really hard to do programs on it. Okay, it's really hard. And so I'm just going to say, I'm looking at these. I like the She project, not just because of the name, Tina. And I like the 5-year thing because it shows we're here not just a now, we're going to pay some money like our debt to you. We're actually there to help you over a sustained period. So that's where I ended up on those 2 things.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Director Scazola, and then I'll come back to you, Director.
I very much just want to ditto Chair Tyson's comments. That was very well said. And to add on that, slide 9, I looked at that really did blow my mind. I was like, we're clearly listening to the community. So that's when I started getting those feels, right there, that slide number 9. So I'm very much plan B. I would go with plan B. And just as a little reminder, we have had quite a windfall year. And so I think that we should take advantage of that and just spend as much money as we can, especially when it comes to the community. So we were talking last meeting about the community, how involved we are, how the wording is we are focused on last meeting when it comes to the community and having that long-lasting relationship. And I see it here. So I'm incredibly pleased with what I'm seeing here. 100% supportive, and I would go with plan B.
Okay, plan B, option.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Option B.
Option B to be specific.
5 years.
Let me just check
Just
my.
talking about 5 years, right?
Yes, 5 years, please. Thank you for.
Okay, I was just trying to
I should
understand.
have put ARB on that slide.
Give me 1 second here.
So you
Yeah,
look
and
at-
again, it really shows us being really invested in the community, especially you have the affordable housing potential there and the electrification potential. So many of our goals are met with option B.
Okay. All right, very good. Director Walia.
Thank you. I agree with pretty much what has been said so far. I especially want to thank Bruce for pointing out what you did. That was in the back of my mind. You articulated it beautifully. I was holding my comments part so far. So the only question, I agree with the 5 years and everything. The only question is, as we move forward, I would like, for the reasons Bruce pointed out, we have 1.8 million allocated, which was great thinking on the part of Team SVCE when we put that together, I think last summer. Do we want to keep in mind, without having to change this current recommendation, that after year 2, we put more money in the featherization part? There's a lot more benefit from that move. Just wanted to share that. Other than that, staff has done a stellar job proposing this and sorting everything out. It looks very simple and easy, which is once again to the credit of Team SVCE. You guys are fabulous. I agree with the 5-year and of course, for the reasons stated. So I'm really enjoying that.
Okay, thank you very much. Director Klein.
Sure, and I'll pile on, I do think that option B is the right course. I'll second the weatherization program. That being said, it's a decision we can make a year and a half from now, 2 years from now without a problem. We'd love to see success of both programs, but we do need to continue to evaluate how they're performing, are they meeting their budget requirements, all that, and making a decision a year from now, 2 years from now. We still have 300,000. We wish it was 300 million. 300,000 to as far as this program is concerned, and making that decision conceivably on weatherization, I think is valuable, but not for today's decision. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I agree with what's been said. I didn't hear a staff recommendation, but you're presenting us options, and depending on what you hear, so you're fighting, you're not gonna say, okay. I also like option B, but as my husband, I have a different monetary, I always believe in investing upfront because it always costs more later. So I do like this. I will say the caveat, and we've had 100% affordable housing that's actually going to break ground finally this summer in partnership with the county. But 5 years may not be enough for that project. So I wonder if there's a way to frame it around project. I don't know about completion. That might be a really long time, but 5 years may actually be too short for that project to get off the ground and be, whatever. So I don't know if there's a way to take that into consideration. If there's a little footnote, we will reassess the timelines, but I support option B.
Okay, great. And I also, as I alluded to earlier, I'm very supportive of option B. I do very much appreciate and think weatherization is really important. It is. It's just, we have to be sure that people are able to do that up front. But I guess the value I see in that is that weatherization is, as Bruce was saying, is something very easy. And I feel like that it's a very low barrier to be able to do. And so I think, that's something that community members might find an easier way to access than electrification. And I think the promoters, we've seen this happen with COVID, we've seen it happen with even now, Know Your Rights, something they call like a promotoras, which is what I'm assuming they use, is kind of this person to person going household to household has been so effective. And I'm guessing that's why they have the success they have. So I'm really excited to see what will happen with our influence there. Because there's trust, there's so much trust within, urban planning says that when you have communities that are strained, they're much closer, their networks are much more close. So I think that's a great thing. And I also really think that it is an awesome opportunity for us to do the community building where we can have education, where people can come and get access to maybe some things that aren't so tangible to them, and really be a beacon in the community. For SVCE. So it makes me feel reassured that there's still some monies there that hopefully we could put to weatherization. Let's say they lose their funding come next year, we might also be able to be the shero. So lots of opportunities. I'm excited. Thank you to the staff. What a great job. Well done. So shall we vote?
Need a motion.
All right, can I get a motion in a second?
I'm happy to move staff recommendation for 2 years for the Kings County and 5-year option B for she. Is that good enough?
Not to exceed 1.5 million.
Not to exceed $1.5 million.
Second.
Do you need any other wording there? Okay, thanks.
Okay.
And I think the one other question was if we're okay doing consent.
Well, this would be a question to Chair Tyson. We're happy to share this on the regular agenda too. I think we have
Yeah, I
time.
You know, I think it would play well. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I would do it.
It's
So we're only presenting option B, just to be clear.
If I may, on that, I think it would really help for the board members, especially the newer board members, to see the effectiveness and the long-term thinking that we do at SVCE. Because this has taken multiple years in so many ways.
Quite well, more history.
Okay, so we've got a motion, we've got a second.
Chair Martinez Beltran,
Aye.
Vice Chair Meadows,
Aye.
Director Swazola,
Aye.
Walia,
Aye.
Klein,
Aye.
Tyson.
Yes.
That motion carries unanimously.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Pam, Juliet, I know Lolly, I don't know if she's on the call, but Lolly had a lot to do with this as well.
Thank you.
Great job,
That
yeah.
Really.
Now we're all getting feels.
Yeah, we're all getting the feels, Cazola.
Well, worth it.
And it puts in perspective before the trip, ribbon cutting.
Oh, yes, yeah, that was.
Yeah,
really good.
it's
So true.
perfect timing. We didn't know if we were gonna make it in time, but we'll be able to announce it at the board.
Yeah, that's so great, yes.
Fantastic. Hopefully they'll be there, she and Cacao will be there as well. I call him Cacao.
Or cacao. That sounds good. Okay,
Cacao.
so let's move to number 4. Recommend the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Board of Directors authorize the CEO approval of Cal CCA annual budget and dues in an amount not to exceed $750,000 per Cal CCA's fiscal year.
So moved. I'm not sure my feelings. Yeah, right?
Okay, we will give an opportunity to hear from Meredith.
Well, thank you. Good to be with everybody this morning. So yeah, we did want to come and talk a little bit to executive committee. And I think our plan right now would be that we would take this to the board in April on consent, but obviously welcome feedback on that. So what we're seeking here is really intended to help streamline the budget process. So right now there's a bit of a misalignment between Cal CCA's fiscal year and SVCE's. And so Monica, as a Cal CCA board member, I don't know if it's awkward, but it could be streamlined, wherein she approves the Cal CCA dues as a Cal CCA board member, but doesn't actually have authorization yet as a CEO to ensure that SVCE can, pay the dues that she's approved in that other capacity.
Living on the edge.
Yeah. And so our ask is that on an ongoing basis, as long as the dues and the special assessments budget at Cal CCA don't exceed $750K during their fiscal year, Monica would already have that authorization to make the spend. So I know a lot of folks in this room are already very familiar with Cal CCA and the benefits it brings. I'm certainly happy to speak to those. I also know we have a time constraint, so I can cut my time short if that's preferred by the group in the room. Or Monica, anything else you want to add necessarily?
Yeah, I think-
Operational.
Does anybody request more information? Okay,
Not on the benefits, I do have.
yeah, sure, we'll still take questions.
How have the dues varied over time?
Yeah, good question. So this year's dues are roughly, I think the number is 13% higher than what we paid last year. A lot of that is because they've added new staffing, they've expanded their scope a little bit over the last year. We have seen forecast numbers for, I believe, the next 2 or 3 years, and they look relatively flat.
Okay.
So we think the $750K would be good for probably at least 2 or 3 years.
That's good.
Great question.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. We need to take action on this, yes. Okay, so is there any public, I'll go ahead and move to public comment. Is there any public comment? Okay, we
None
have
online.
no public comment online or here in the conference room. So we'll close public comment and any last pressing comments? Director Meadows, did you want to go ahead and move forward with your motion?
All right, yes, I move that we recommend that the board approve the annual budget for payment to Cal CCA starting the next fiscal year in amount not to exceed $750,000 annual.
Right.
Second by Klein.
Okay, we have a second by Klein. And we'll go ahead and do roll call.
Chair Martinez Beltran,
Aye.
Vice Chair Meadows,
Aye.
Director Schozola,
Aye.
Walia,
Aye.
Klein,
Aye.
Tyson,
Yes.
carried unanimously.
All right. And now we're moving to new number 5, which is old number 6. Is that right?
Yes.
Input for new building community space. And this is to be a discussion. So we will have staff. So
Monica and I will tag team.
Okay, very good.
Questions on it? Okay, I have a very short overview presentation, but really this is meant to kind of get your input. As you all know, we have this new building, which is going to become our community energy headquarters. In that building, we have staff space. Well, you can go to the next slide, actually. So we have staff space, but then we also have the boardroom and then additional space that we can use to do mission aligned things with the community. Today's not to kind of get input on that, but rather it's to get your input on how to best get board input. We want to do this in a process that we get the best information possible. We also have some time constraints because we want input before the architects come on. So I want to talk through that. Next slide. So this is the general timeline that we are aiming towards. So you can see, it might not be clear, but this is pretty aggressive. We want to try to move in Q2 of next year, which means that we would want to be getting input really this spring from the board and the executive committee. Next slide. Okay, so this is the last slide. So this is really meant to be totally a discussion item. That's our beautiful building. As I mentioned, what we're looking for your input on, not boring things about like where to put our cubicles and such, but rather the board chambers and the kind of community space, the non-office space. So we'd love to just talk through how you would like to gather that info. We've come up with a few ideas. One, we could work directly with this committee. We meet regularly and have kind of longer discussions. We know the availability. We have these meetings set for the quarter. We could hold a board study session before a board meeting, after a board meeting on the weekend. Those are often difficult to schedule, but it would allow for greater participation beyond this committee. We could develop an ad hoc committee, which again, we would require additional logistics, but then maybe would just allow people, those who were interested in participating, to give us their input. Or you all might have other ideas. So happy to answer questions. Yeah, go ahead.
So I will take my privilege as a chair. I think it would be great. We already have a body here with the executive committee. What if we made it a workshop? We could invite our other board of directors here. And then we know we've got some people showing. And then I would really love to see this extend to the board of directors. I think it's a really exciting moment in time and growth, and that everybody should be invested if they so choose. And it would just be, I know it has been hard. We've had these, where we've tried to come together on different days, and it's kind of harder. So that's just an idea.
So just to clarify, it would be an executive committee,
Like a workshop.
study session that we
Yes.
invite all of the board?
Yeah.
Brown Act.
Yeah, we might have a Brown Act issue. I think it might be better to have a study session of the board.
Okay.
Then we wouldn't have a Brown Act issue.
what, maybe we could do it in lieu of an executive committee, because then you might be able to get, you know what I mean?
Oh, have it at this time.
Right. So I think that's just I'm just trying to say, so. We want to try and get as many people as we can capture, and everyone's schedules are
So are we on discussion then? Did we take public comment or?
we have not taken public comment.
I have clarification.
Questions first.
Yeah, so, did you have a question?
Yeah, just focused on the process. In terms of the options. When you're saying other, I know you have a couple of thoughts, hybrid version of these. The chair just mentioned one. What would be most effective for you in terms of the timeline? Because I saw there, and you really need that list before you go to the architect. I've been on the other side, so I know. Trust
We
me.
would like to have the comments from the board wrapped up by the June board meeting at the latest. So if it was going to be, we could do the May executive committee meeting, but the June board meeting would be the latest. We'd want the comments.
Why not start earlier in April?
They probably have stuff lined up.
Oh, earlier is great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
earlier is fine.
Okay, and what other hybrid option would you think would be effective time-wise and process-wise?
Well, we didn't really have another hybrid option,
Okay.
honestly. Yep, those
Okay.
were the ones that we put forward. I mean, I suppose one somewhat hybrid would be to come to this committee to do a more in-depth session on the feedback and then bring the executive committee's recommendation and ideas to a regular board meeting to allow for additional input, but make the executive committee the one that provided the in-depth.
Okay, thanks. That's all my questions.
Okay, anyone else? Director Klein?
As far as,
Director Meadows?
as far as input that you're looking for, so I understand chambers is fairly easy to define. From a workspace standpoint, so you kind of have workspace, you have, let's say, community, we know that going in, that there's conceivable, say, unused space and how that would be managed, because conceivably it's an income stream, but it's also conceivably a partnership with other organizations that conceivably there's overlap and there's value there. Do we, for one thing, for the organizations, do we know which we might partner with, kind of looking at what their needs might be? And the other thing is from a building standpoint, we talked a little bit, let's say offline, but I think putting it on the table as early as possible as far as solar panels, electrification, battery backup. You know, it's like there's these programming the space, but there's also kind of the adjacent space to highlight an electric building and what we're doing there. There's been a lot of that sort of, let's say, minor discussions. I'm just trying to get a
We
better
don't have
feel.
anything prescribed. I mean, the only kind of space that we've really given much thought to is the office space, and we've met with staff on that too, and we're getting their feedback. And then chambers, and there's a little bit of decision making around like the chambers, how big should it be?
Yeah.
Should it have a dais, should it not have a dais, all of those things that we'll want some feedback from a representation of the board.
Right.
But the rest of the space is kind of a blank canvas right now. So there's two elements to what we want input on. How should we best use the space to demonstrate and provide value to our communities? And then the timing of it, right? Because there's a timing constraint here too. If we could spend a lot of time thinking about that. We don't have a lot of time to move in as far as office space. And so should we phase it? Should maybe we just leave it for a little while until we really kind of sit in the community and feel it and then develop it? Or should we go and reach out to partners and figure out what they need? And so we have a lot of questions where this is all new for us, by the way. And we truly want to engage the board. But we want to engage the board in a way that's effective, that we can actually manage the input and take it and give it to the designers. Because what we fear is that we have a lot of great ideas, but we just don't know how to make those ideas come to fruition in the time period that we have. So, but I've heard a lot of good ideas, a lot of great ideas. We just have to, at some point, prioritize them and see what makes sense.
So, and I'll second, I think a workshop of the board makes sense.
Okay.
and the full board and even alternates, and it's like as many from that standpoint, I think there's a lot of value, but yeah, the sooner we can lay out goals and even before that workshop, kind of, so how we, you know, for me, I've been in the space, but it's kind of trying to put down how big the space is, and you know, and I look at the workshop as charrettes and all that I've done, you know, much like laying out the Caltrain, layout of the Caltrain, the electric Caltrain cars that I was part of multiple of those, of what makes sense where. That I think is what we need to do from workshop, and so it's almost a two-stage workshop of let's try to get everything out on the table of what we'd like to see, and then how we would define that, and whether or not we can do that in one session or it ends up being two workshops becomes the question. I understand it's moved quickly, but it's also trying to get as much as, and I don't like the concept, at least from a feel standpoint, of well, let's leave part of it empty. Is like, it's also, it would be imposing on the people that are there. If we're gonna do construction, second phase of construction 3 years from now or something, I think is, doesn't make sense. But the faster we get to what we would like to see, and yes, we might get part of it wrong and have to fix, but not leaving it empty to me only causes problems at a later date. So I'll leave that. It's a mixture of comments and questions, but I do think from a process standpoint, I was trying to get a better idea of what you've already envisioned. I don't think we know what we want, and so to me, it's getting as much out on the table early, but then doing the charrettes thing, I think has always been valuable from what I've seen in the past.
Yeah, and today we're really just asking about how do we initiate that process with the board and what's the proper format.
One of the things you might want to do, not that Sunnyvale is perfect, but we just went through this process of to a certain degree, and council was part of it, but it was mainly staff, because we went from a city hall annex and all that to a brand new building, and how they laid out, how they did that. So conceivably talk to city staff, and I can try to find out who led that, because it was trying to define what each department needed, what the chamber's requirements were and all that. So not that we got anything perfect, but it's that process. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. Sorry.
Thank you.
Maybe just help it, just one kind of early process questions I heard you say. I do think it is a stage process. Like the first piece is, what are the goals and values that you want to get out of the space, and like what's the priority of that? Thinking everything from a place that can help customers with their bills to a place with innovation. Like, and once we have a sense of what the kind of priority of goals are, then it's easier to conceive of kind of the how and the actual design of the space. But I think those probably process-wise would be two separate conversations.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks.
anyone else? Director Meadows, then Director Walia.
Yeah, this item is a comment question item. It's really hard to separate the questions, but so I'll start with saying, have you considered, that makes it a question. Have you considered that we actually need to be in the space to answer some of these questions? So going to the comment part, you almost have to have an open public workshop in the space and have people be able to get a sense of it, because it's very hard to not have been in the space. And I know there was a little bit of a, come before dinner, but that, so, and whether you bring in a bunch of tables and you have a bunch of whiteboards and the charrette thing, whatever that looks like, you may have to really have somebody help you with it, because it could be an extensive process. But I do think it's right that you'd have everyone in the space, and however you're collecting the feedback then, and then you have a group to sort of get together and hear, and maybe that's this committee, to hear what came out of the time in the space, and then a recommendation could go to the board. That's,
Yeah, I think what I heard was
you have to see the space.
that for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, that for sure. And we would hold it in that space so you can really absorb it. But what I think I heard is have one big workshop of the whole board, and then maybe based on that first iteration, we can bring something to the executive committee.
That's just my question comment on how I would see it, and then with all the things that Larry mentioned to like collect the ideas and the feedback, so.
And to hold it at the new building?
Well, the first workshop would be,
Okay.
you know, to gather input.
Great.
Yeah. George's got
Hold
a
on.
hand up.
Okay,
Yeah,
we're gonna take Director
Yeah.
Walia, then we're gonna come to you, Director Tyson.
So,
Well, I like the way this is going. Actually, I'm a broken record. You do a needs assessment or user requirements. That's what I heard from Zoe.
George, just
Oh.
a moment. We were, sorry, I don't know that you heard me. We were gonna take Director Walia and then we'll come over to
I
you.
didn't hear you. Sorry about that.
Hi,
so,
sorry. So microphone.
so what I'm hearing, since we are doing question slash comments, I would go back to the process timeline, because it can work in numerous, either way, whether you start with the executive committee and then go to the full board. I do believe, as I also mentioned to Monica when she laid out, and George when he said that we can have a study session of the board, I think it's important to get everyone's feedback. The way to start with is, and it's a highly great point, most people can't envision the sense of space. Have you talked to any project managers, or do you have any internal list? Because that goals and values is kind of the concept. That's where the architects will take off in terms of defining the sizes of the spaces and building in flexibility for the non-SVCE or the community space that you're talking. That is one way. I agree with what Larry just said, that, sorry, too many titles between yesterday.
I know, it's the same, it's on.
That building in two phases of construction is a bigger headache in my mind, and also not the best in terms of cost. So doing it in one go with building flexibility in design there. Going back to staff, I think staff knows pretty much what you need, what your growth projections are for the next few years. That once that sense of space can be put aside with the chambers for the meetings and then other, that's one way. So I would go back to your timeline that is important, and maybe start with your list as a starting point before you take it to any committee. It's rather than starting from scratch, not come with a blank canvas. That is a great conversation starter. And I have a lot more feedback on this. You're happy to reach me anytime offline. But I'll limit my comments, questions to that.
Okay, thank you. Director Tyson.
Sorry about that earlier. I was starting to say that I think I'm a broken record about needs assessment, user requirements. I'm hearing a lot of the things that make a lot of sense to me. I also like the thought of having the broad collection of information from various users, as I say. And I guess a little bit my caution would be maybe the board has the most influence on the board kind of chambers and the least on the employee space, and somewhere in the middle on the public space because of what we're going to do. I really like what Larry said about having some experience in how to do work on this with the community. And I guess my other caveat is everybody's going to have an opinion on this. And so we have a workshop, we collect information. If people can't go, that's okay, we collect it. And then we don't go through too many rounds. Okay. And so maybe it comes back to the EC once. Did I hear something like that earlier? And so I'm liking that as a general flow. And the only thing I think I would disagree with is director / vice chair / and Larry. I would say if we're not sure what the open space is and we build something fairly generic, that maybe there's a rotating display or something like that, I would rather not slow down the employee space and have something generic at the risk of maybe doing some construction later.
Okay, great. Thank you. Director Scazola, did you have any questions? Okay. I will say that I'm also very excited about this, and I agree. I would love, maybe we could do the whole workshop. I think you said we could hold it there. I think that would be ideal. I would love to see a video before anybody meets anywhere I haven't had a chance to get to the space, which I will, but even still, I think it would be great, maybe if staff went out there and took a video of
Oh, we have
inside the
video,
space.
we have videos. Actually, we could share it at the next board meeting too.
But if you could, even if you could send that out, tell the board of directors with maybe some type of a, probing of, here's what we're thinking, or what we know, this is, how much space it is, here's maybe a budget, whatever it is, but some things to start people thinking before they get there. So you're not getting everybody's first reaction, of what it is that they envision, because as people have said, we really need to kind of move this along, it sounds like. So this way, all the big ideas can come out, get on the table, and we can move right along through that. So I would also like to see, some type of a just flexibility in that space, especially if it's for the public. I think there's going to be different needs. This is talking about what is the needs assessment. I think we're going to find lots of different needs in the community. From, I know I'm working with not-for-profits in our city, some are very efficient and they, they're a machine. They work where others are newer, they might be smaller, they have different needs. Maybe even work with our community foundation and being supported that way. So I think there's going to be a difference in how we need to support them. So I think that's something interesting, and maybe this space can be some type of a flexible space, where we can vary rentals versus community, gifting and what the purpose is. So I think all of that is really important as well. Those are pretty much the big things. I just want to make sure that everybody has a say in it, and it looks like this is exactly where it's going. So I trust you will.
Just to reiterate though, I think the process that I heard, provide information up front. Be very clear about what the feedback that we're trying to get. That the first one will be an all board workshop. Open to everyone, and then we'll hold it in the space. We'll get feedback, we'll digest that feedback. Well, we do have a contractor that we're in the process of doing that too, a project manager, and so we'll figure out how to best put that information in a usable format and then bring it back to the executive committee and then to the board eventually as a recommendation.
I think that sounds great. Let's hear what everyone else has. Is this another
One more
question? Okay, so Director.
Does any other Cal CCA or California CCA have its own building?
Yes, we're actually touring one in May. Sonoma Clean Power has one. And so some staff has already been there.
And so it's often much like.
There are a lot of lessons learned of what not to do. Hearing a lot of that.
That's where I was going.
Yes.
I assumed as much, every time a new city hall's done, it's like there were all these comparison diagrams when we were trying to design a final design. Now you're talking about outbuilding a building that's already there. So it'd be probably useful for the board also to get the board as a whole, not just, here's our goals and all that, but here's a few examples of other buildings. And not that we're going to change architecture dramatically, but how they're utilizing their space is educational for us.
Maybe another video.
I like videos. Can I just add something to that? Great point. And something you mentioned earlier and what just Larry said. In these, I think it's the needs, the staff size and the area. That would make a big difference. So you could have a place with 100 staff and the square footage they need, I'm just throwing a number out, 10,000 square feet. And we have 20,000, but we have less staff, so we may not need that. So just a little, not to increase work, but just some square footage numbers, what we are using here versus what we project in terms of staff. That is critical because that's going to immediately say, this is the total size, 3/4 of it is just for this.
Right. And we haven't, nothing has been defined yet, but though our thinking thus far has been, it's a 28,000 square foot building. 14,000 on the second floor, 14,000 on the first floor. But we would secure and devote the entire second floor, 14,000 to staff. And it would also have conference rooms that we could use for multiple purposes. The first floor, we would devote to a boardroom. And I don't know how much square feet a boardroom takes. I was trying to look at Bertino's, I'm like, how many square feet is this? I have no idea about that. So part of it would be for chambers and the other part would be this community space. So
So thank you, Monica, because then you're already thinking along the right lines. All somebody needs to do is ping Cupertino and say, what's the size of, what's the square footage? Because those will immediately just cut it down to all the great ideas.
Yeah, and we've toured a lot of really nice chambers and community centers in our community, so we have really good ideas about what, because when we come together as all in-person days, we can't fit here, so
Right.
we're out in the community and we've got a lot of good ideas about space and how nice.
I really support what Larry just pointed out, that the other CCAs, because that'll help.
Yeah.
That's why I'm just adding the square footage to his request.
Yeah.
I have a question. So now we're talking about the chambers. Oh, me?
I don't know.
know.
No, she's doing a head count.
Okay, okay.
Never mind.
I'm like, what's happening? Now we're talking about the chambers. Is that something that we want included in this discussion about the community space? Okay, so then I think that's important because from my perspective, Cupertino seems much larger than what we would need for SVCE.
So that'll all be part of the discussion of the workshop.
Excellent.
That's a scope, yeah.
Okay, okay, very good.
I know you guys want to get out of here, so.
Yeah,
all right.
We got the feedback.
Yes.
Community,
Yes,
Oh.
or I just didn't, no one else had any comments. Okay, so we'll go ahead and move and we'll take public comment. If you have public comment.
Thank you. I've often thought about how the alumni directors can best be used to further SVCE's objectives. You all know that there's such a steep learning curve as a new director, and there are people out in the world who are no longer city council members who have most of that learning. They haven't forgotten it all yet. And this might be a perfect example to invite them to reconnect.
Yes.
In particular, I'm thinking of Liz Gibbons, who's an architect and
right.
Oh, yeah. Oh, she'll love it.
She'll love
She'll love
it.
it.
That's a fantastic.
And also, I think it's always good to have like 3 options to pick from. You like it more like this or more like that or more like this. And that makes it so much easier to share your ideas about what you like and why you like it.
All great feedback. I was going to tell him to say that. Thank you for that. Are there any other public comments?
No additional comments.
Okay, great. So we'll close public comment and that was just discussion, exciting discussion. So now we will move to 6, clean power update.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, we had our last onsite there at the new building. It was very exciting. So very exciting to see. All right, I've met a few of you, but my name is Willie Wang. I work on the power resources team, and I'm here today to give you an update on our clean power procurement efforts. How much, so are we good on time? How are we just?
We are good on time. We've got 10 minutes.
Okay.
10 minutes, 2 items.
All right, 2 items.
So I got about 10 slides.
You get about 7.5 minutes.
Okay. So just want to remind everyone, I'll summarize our mission statement. As Pamela alluded to earlier, we want to provide reliable, affordable, and clean electricity for 13-member communities. Just a real high flyover of our regulatory landscape, which guides what we need to do. The CPUC and the CEC largely control the regulatory landscape in California. The CPUC, the Public Utilities Commission, they regulate the load-serving entities, and that includes the 3 large investor-owned utilities as well as the CCAs, which is us. And the CEC primarily is responsible for forecasting energy demand. The 2 in tandem, they also work on ensuring that there are sufficient resources to meet the demand and grid reliability. Of course, we have our esteemed board, and you guys help ensure that we're compliant, fiscally responsible, and in general, that we're doing right by our communities. Getting into a little bit of the specifics about the regulations and targets that we need to meet. So I'll start with SB 100 that kind of sets the baseline of California's energy goals. So this is 60% renewable energy by 2030 and 100% carbon-free by 2045. Then in conjunction with that, then there's SB 350, which stipulates of the renewable energy, 65% of it needs to come from long-term contracts, which is defined as 10 years or more. Those are usually in the shape of PPAs or power purchase agreements. The CPUC, they passed a decision to focus on midterm reliability. And that's really focused on ensuring that there's enough sufficient demand coming online in the midterm, which is defined as 3 to 5 years. Specifically so for this order, they're saying by 2028, 11 gigawatts for California, and then of that 300 megawatts is SVCE's responsibility. Again, the SVCE board, you guys know this, 100% clean annually has been the directive since inception. Going above and beyond SB 100, we're looking at 75% renewable by 2030 and 100% renewable by 2035 as adopted in the November board. So how are we doing and where are we today? So I'll go over this slide in a little bit more detail. But long story short, we're well on track. So I think that's good. Starting with the bars, the dark teal is the RPS amounts. Okay, and so for the bars, the graph, the axis is the left axis. Okay, so the one that goes to 4 million megawatt hours. So the dark teal is our RPS eligible resources, and then the light teal is the GHG or carbon-free resources. So together, that is SVCE's clean position. Okay. Then going to the lines, and that'll use the right axis, the percentage axis. So starting at the bottom red is the SB 100 RPS targets. So that escalates up to the 60% aforementioned at 2030. Then above that, the dark blue, that is SVCE's RPS percentage, kind of follows the RPS part. And you can see, we're above the targets and we're meeting, even at current, the 75% target set by the board in 2030. Then I'll draw your attention to the flat line on top. So that's the SVCE clean target. And you'll notice that that's actually slightly above 100%. It's actually 106%. On the previous slide I mentioned, I didn't mention it, but it's 100% including the line losses. So we're covering that, we're estimating about 6%. So that's why it's a little bit above 100. And then the staggered line on top is the total clean position at home. Any questions?
No.
And then in terms of SB 350, this one's a little bit more nuanced, but we're also on track. SB 350, one thing to note is that it's a multi-year compliance period obligation. And we just started compliance period 5 with 2025. And this compliance period will run for 3 years from 25 to 27. So it's the aggregate that's looking at over these 3 years. However, there are still annual targets for us to meet based on our retail load. So for 2020, this is a breakdown of 2025. So the SB 350 target on the very right is 31%, and we're currently at 45%. And then this will be aggregated over the 3 years to make sure that you're compliant. And so CP4 just ended in 2024, and we met that. Here's an overview of our current active contracts. So we have almost $4 billion for the term of our power purchase agreements. 22 in total have been signed. And as you can see, these are the 9 currently active projects. And it's a diversity of technologies and kind of scattered all over California and a few in the surrounding states. Just wanted to mention here that when we're looking at projects, we try to value stack as much as possible. This is Victory Pass, which went live last year. And this was a solar plus battery down in SoCal area, outside Palm Springs. 15-year term, so it meets SB 350, meets SB 100, solar renewable energy, meets MTR, and of course the board adopted clean goals. And this is accounting for about 8% of our load. Here's a breakdown of our online of the 22. Broke them down into online, and you'll see developing on the next page. So these are our online projects, and I'll just touch upon Casa Diablo, which is pictured a little bit. This is a 30 megawatt advanced closed loop geothermal project that we signed that went live in 2022. And interesting, it was the first geothermal project in the CAISO territory in 30 years. And it was also the first ORMAT. They have a 1 gigawatt portfolio around, and this was the first project that they signed with CCAs as well. So going to developing projects, you'll see ORMAT here too. But these are the 13 in development. I'll touch upon Sanzia a little bit, which you see on the right. This is a massive wind project that's being developed in New Mexico, 3.5 gigawatts across 2 sites. This also is including the development of a DC transmission line to bring the energy from New Mexico to existing 500 kV transmission in Arizona that'll bring it into California. And it's creating about over 2,500 jobs. And then the last slide here, this is just more in depth, the progress of the 13 projects that are in development. As you can see, we have a lot of stuff coming online in the near term. Just want to say, we're hard at work. We're working on not only finding and executing these contracts, but as I'm learning, there's still a lot of tracking we need to do from there to bring it to COD, to commercial operation. And then as well, these are long live assets, over 10 years, we got to track the performance, make sure the settlements are correct. And you can see some of these, the things are changing very quickly, with tariffs, supply chains, permitting delays. So a lot of things we need to deal with. So no shortage of things to do, but we're on target. And
So those first 3 are delayed, so we don't know when they'll come online.
Hanford is that's coming on in that's coming on in June. And we'll be visiting. Goal Line, correct, that is delayed. Date hasn't been changed yet. And then Alice and San Luis West we're in negotiations as well.
So this report, a very simpler version of this report is provided in the CEO report every month as part of the packet. We just thought it'd be important to just maybe pull it out and highlight it with the executive committee. Important stuff.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, quick question.
Yes, Director Klein.
Does DC power lines have less loss? Or just, I don't think we've talked about AC versus DC, at least in my time here.
Okay, I'm not an engineer. I know you are, but I got to tour the facility, and it's a very unique configuration because they also do a DC to AC to DC conversion, which has never been done before in order to minimize losses.
Okay.
But over long distances, yes. Long
Okay.
story short, that's why. If it's at high voltage and long distances.
And how much, so most of what we're doing here is all AC distribution within California, correct? Is there any actual DC?
No, not generally.
This is because I haven't heard of it. Okay.
Because it does add that you have to do the conversion, and then there's losses whenever you do that too.
Right.
But this one, I guess, they deemed the economics good enough for this long distance.
Okay.
And it's the endpoints, so it made sense for this project.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, and we always looking at loss, and that's always kind of a portion of that, but has there ever been talk about improvement? Actually, I'll do this offline. Forget it. Sorry. Lots of questions from an engineering standpoint that I had.
Infrastructure is definitely something that, is at the forefront in US. And they're looking at all sorts of technologies to improve transmission.
But there's a whole movie about
conductors.
that. What was the movie, that one about Tesla?
Is it?
It came out a few years ago.
Quite a few,
About the benefits of AC versus DC.
Yeah.
It's an ongoing battle of electrical engineering.
I understood, but I thought pretty much we settled on AC, but hadn't heard that we're trying to do DC distribution in any way. And I understand there's the loss from the transit, anyway. Thank you for,
Good to have
thank you for
electrical
allowing me.
engineer here, though.
Yeah, okay.
So Director Walia.
Thank you.
Willie, thank you. Fabulous presentation. I don't think electrical engineers will ever sort that one out between AC and DC. I live with one, so that's why that remark. This is fabulous. You have taken the 6-7 minutes versus the report we get monthly in the board packet. Have you considered, and this is the question, have you considered doing this every quarter with the executive committee or half a year or something like that?
I used to do
intermittently.
Yeah, I used to do it more, when I was Power Resource Director, I did it quite often because we were signing so many contracts and so I just like, the board needs to be aware of this stuff, the board needs to be aware of this stuff, and then we signed all those contracts, and then we're like, okay, well, all we're really doing is reporting kind of progress at this point, there's not a lot. But I think that's the intent with coming today, is to see if there's interest in hearing this more often, and whether it should come to this or the full board. You know, we have some PPAs that we'll hope to bring to some power purchase agreement that we hope to bring to the board for approval in the May-June timeframe. So we'll give this whole report again as part of the why are we doing these contracts type thing. But yes, we can come quarterly to this group.
I'd support that. This is fabulous. Thank you.
All right, well, you're here every quarter, then somebody is.
Does anybody else have any questions? If not, then this is just information, correct?
Yep.
All right, very good. And so we'll move to number 7, which is program snapshot, programs marketing overview.
Okay, I'm just gonna introduce Sean. He's our program marketing manager, doing a ton of work. We're focused on scaling up our program adoption. And so Sean's just gonna give you a very brief overview of all the activities we have going on to share what we're doing with our customers. Take it away.
Sean.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Good to see you all. Sorry I'm not able to be with you in person today. Yep, Sean Gillison. Thanks for the intro, Pam. And we can move right along to this first slide here. So just at a high level, I wanted to share what our marketing strategy is. And what we're really trying to do is we're trying to build awareness of SVCE and electrification. We're trying to develop trust of the agency and also drive participation in our programs. We can jump along to the next slide here and take a quick look at the marketing funnel. So when we think of a marketing funnel, we think of different stages, like how ready someone is to do something. So at the top of the funnel, we have the awareness stage. So it's like electrification. What is it? Why does it matter? Also a little bit about, SVCE, why should they trust us and take advantage of our programs? And we have consideration, which actions should I actually take? Then we get someone to the action stage where they're ready to actually electrify, and we're helping make a plan. We're helping them figure out how they can find a contractor, get quotes, and do all that. And that's where the program's marketing, the bulk of it is fitting in once we've taken care of the awareness. And then we hope to have advocates. They had a great experience. They love their new equipment and their all-electric home, and they share that with their neighbors, their friends, their family. Next slide. In the past, we've looked at personas, and I'm not going to go into every bit of detail of how we message to them, but just at a high level, this is kind of looking at how far along someone is in that funnel and just how interested they are. And there's a large section of people that are not in either of the two ends here, as you would probably expect. They're not energy wonks. They're also not like totally opposed to this, but they're busy. They have some sustainability values. And so we think they're an interested audience. They may not have all the awareness they need, and they also need to actually hear about our programs and know who we are. So we are working at all the different levels and on most of these audiences, but we do have a focus on kind of the center there. Next slide. One thing that we are doing that is different than the past is we're taking on this idea of umbrella versus dedicated program marketing. And this new approach brings together our programs that we're offering, because as you know, we have significantly more programs offered right now than we did even a year ago. And so we're bringing those programs together by their area of focus. So for example, building electrification are different pathways to go electric at home, but also by audience. So this could be an income qualified customer versus a renter or a homeowner. So there's different audiences within there. So we're also marketing to kind of these larger subsets. And this is hopefully going to bring us increased efficiency, and we'll learn how effective it is. Part of marketing is experimentation and learning, does the bundling together work or not? But we'll still have to do some dedicated marketing. So certain programs, you know, they have a really specific audience, or we just know that they need to be further along in the consideration, in the kind of funnel. And so we'll continue to market for specific programs to specific niche audiences. And we do have marketing plans that we develop for all the programs, but then we also have these umbrella strategies where we're going to market to multiple programs at once. And on the right on this slide, you can see there's an example of a brand new programs eBlast, which is an example of this strategy where we brought together multiple programs into one eBlast, shared that out with all residential customers for this particular one. And we can move forward to the next slide. Continuing on this kind of umbrella theme, we've created a new page on the website within eHub that I know you all heard about, the new eHub from Leslie recently. But on that microsite is what we call. On the microsite, we have a home upgrades page now. And what we're sharing with folks is there's 3 ways to go electric with us. We have 3 pathways with differing levels of support. And so people can click through and kind of see the benefits, almost like a software service when you're trying to decide if you should get the basic free plan, the middling plan, or the enterprise business, whatever pro plan. We're trying to share the different pros and cons across all of these and meet people where they're at. If we go to the next slide, here's a sample of, and this is a fun one. Everyone in there is SVCE staff except for 2 actors that are in the front. We do have an umbrella campaign, our first one that's pushing into eHub as the landing page. It just launched 11 days ago. And it's about Power Squad, we're here to help, and it shows some of the different swaps people can make and kind of how we're a helping hand in making this transition. It's running on Meta, it's running in Google, it's running out of home and bus shelters. It's running in newspaper print weeklies because we're trying to make sure we're not purely digital, and we meet customers that aren't as digital as well and share some of the information and programs that we have available to them. We can go to the next slide. And I've heard that the board is interested in kind of where do we market things. Hopefully this isn't too nerdy for you all, but just at a somewhat high level, we are running paid ads. Those are digital ads on platforms like Meta and Google. They're audio ads on things like Spotify or Audio Go, which gets people to digital radio. It gets to Pandora, has a number of other platforms within it. We're also continuing to do some amount of print, again, in specific areas or for specific reasons. And then out of home, things like billboards or bus side ads or bus shelter ads. Then we're doing email marketing, and we're looking at a new platform for this, but we are continuing to use the one that we have for now to do email marketing. We're doing organic social across platforms that you'd expect. And we're looking at expanding into significantly more partnerships with community-based organizations so we can get to certain audiences, demographics that maybe we haven't always been able to advertise to and market to with these more kind of conventional channels that we're using. And then we're doing our in-person outreach, like events and presentations to chambers or other organizations to share about our programs. We can go to the next slide. And again, I will not go deep on this one, but we are tracking, and we've been building up our tracking capabilities to essentially analyze people's behavior once we bring them to our website, once we bring them to a specific landing page from a campaign. What are they doing? And the things we're really looking at is how many people are visiting, how long are they spending, where are they going once we land them somewhere, and ultimately, how many of them go on to participate in a program, if that's the goal of the campaign versus maybe a more awareness campaign. So you can see that secondary KPIs on the awareness front. And I'm happy to talk offline, or if you have a question later, we can dive into a little bit of how we're doing this, but it gets a little bit wonky. And we can go to the next slide. But here's just a quick look at like the last 12 months of SVCE website traffic. And you can see we had a significant number of visitors, over 400,000 new visitors to the website. And where did they come from? You'll notice that on the right, paid search was the #1 driver. And it's because we had a pretty large campaign, kind of similar to the one we just launched 11 days ago last year. And I'm going to move even faster here. But there were some other channels that contributing as well, like our email, like search, paid social, etc. Next slide. 3-month plus, we have a lot going on, but I'm just going to pick out 3 really quick things. 1, Earth Month, tons of events, and email e-blast going out. We're going to have our first webinars for residents that cover like the spectrum of programs. So it's kind of like 101 programs, 101 webinars in May, 2 of them available at different times a day to hopefully bring folks into those. And then June plus, we're going to be doing an IQ specific e-blast and mailer to folks' homes, sharing about our income qualified programs. But yeah, that is the conclusion of my slides today. Happy to answer any questions, but I know in the interest of time, I went a little fast there at the end.
Right. I know that some folks have to really get out right now.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sean. And then
Do you
Jared.
have any other, does that conclude everything for this piece? Okay, so are there any questions, any comments? If not, I'm gonna go ahead and.
I have a
go ahead.
quick comment. Very well done, Sean, and the question lighthearted is, where are you? I want to.
I thought the same.
Yeah. Santa Cruz.
Is that Santa Cruz?
Come on over anytime.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That is good. Wow, good identification. But yeah, that is Santa Cruz behind me.
Okay, well, thank you, Sean. And any staff committee marks? If not, we're adjourned.
Well, we did have one other, well, we can adjourn, let's adjourn, and then we have one item to share with you after we adjourn.
Okay,
No,
why don't we
during the
don't know about that.
Why don't
Not
we?
related. It's just a picture. It's just a picture.
Why don't, let's go ahead and show it and then, and
And
we'll.
then follow part of the public process. Go ahead. We had a request from one of our board members to share a picture.
Oh, okay. Oh.
Director Tyson, would you like to explain what we're seeing?
That's why I'm not there. Our grandson was born Wednesday evening.
Oh, congratulations.
His name is Arlo Driscoll, and that's his 2-year-old big brother.
I love it. Fantastic.
And so we're
Congratulations.
in Colorado.
Yay.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great reason to be there and not here. So.
I thought so.
And on that, it's Harlow or Arlo? What was it?
Arlo,
Arlo with an A.
Guthrie.
yes, like Arlo Guthrie. Yeah.
Okay, there you go. All right. Well, we will adjourn and congratulations on welcoming Arlo to this world. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.